Hey guys, Panzer J back here at the end of Operation Thunderball. So hopefully you guys were checking out Global War 36 Enthusiast channel and the game, the variable die roll ending. I believe he said he rolled a 3, and that ended the game here at the end of turn 18, so January 45. But each turn is a 6-month increment, so it's actually closer to July 45, let's say, when the game officially ended. And it ended with an Axis victory. The victory points ended up being 8 for the Axis, 5 for the Comintern, and 3 for the Allies. So in this video, I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit some of my thoughts at playing Germany and Italy. Some of the strategy, some of the things I had hoped to accomplish, and some things that went well and some things that didn't go as well. Talk a little bit about my opponents and my ally, Silk, is Japan. And then get into just a little bit of what my thoughts were going forward if the game had progressed to turn 19 and beyond. So first, with my opponents, or I should just say my playing partners. 4 really good guys, Hambone, Global War 36 Enthusiast, Boston Bruce, and Silk. Not just good guys, but exceptional players. We had a lot of fun. Really no controversies. Anything that even did come up, everyone was really agreeable, easygoing about it, which obviously makes the enjoyment of the game that much more when you don't have to worry about controversies popping up and backbiting and any hard feelings going on. So but this is, other than Silk, who this is my first time playing with him, which was great, by the way. The rest of the guys I've had multiple YouTube wars with, so I already knew going in that that was going to be very enjoyable. And we do have another YouTube war set up. Probably won't kick off until the first week of January, but we'll see. That is going to be From Russia with Love, continuing our James Bond theme. And I am going to be the Japanese in that YouTube war. Hambone is actually going to be my ally as the Germans. Boston Bruce is going to be the United States. Global War 36 Enthusiast is going to be the UK, and then Silk is going to play the Comintern. So, but again, just a great group of guys. We had a lot of fun, and I know Global War 36 Enthusiast has said this, and I definitely echo it. Hopefully we have years to come with this group of guys getting into more YouTube wars down the road, and hopefully maybe even this year coming up, some in-person Global War 36 games. Okay, so on to Thunderball. So not a lot to talk about with Italy. Mostly I'm going to focus on Germany here because Italy stayed out of the war the entire game. So with Germany, I didn't really go in with a specific strategy that could possibly be to my detriment. Obviously, I wanted to, come in here in Spain and take out the Republicans as quickly as possible. Because Germany has such a stronger economy than Italy, I wanted most of the Lend-Leasing, or at least the more expensive Lend-Lease units, to come from Germany. I was trying to limit Italy's Lend-Leasing as much as possible, and when they did, I think it was just basically mountain infantry, just because Italy has such a small economy that they really can't afford to, send expensive units over to Spain. So I tried to leave that burden to the Germans. I think I ended up sending a couple of fighters over the first couple of turns, and it went according to plan. Bruce put up a strong defense. We did take Spain. The Republicans, or the Nationalists, won. But it took a little bit longer than I would have liked and suffered a few more casualties. But beyond that, my main goal with Germany is, and this is pretty much every game is when I do the Blitzkrieg turn for Germany, I like to take out pretty much all of Germany's opponents or future opponents on the continent in just that one turn. So I want to take out France, Switzerland, Belgium, Poland. I usually try to get Yugoslavia as well, and possibly Denmark. I don't believe I did this game, but I accomplished that. Beyond that, I really didn't have any preset plans. I wanted to kind of see how the game evolved. I didn't know if England was going to be my next target or Russia, depending, again, how things played out. It ended up being that Boston Bruce, with the common turn, declared war on me before I could declare war on him. So that was a little bit of a surprise. So then it was easy to then decide, okay, well, it's got to be Russia at this point. England wasn't strong enough to get back on the continent themselves. They had to wait on the United States. So that gave me a window of opportunity to basically engage Russia in an almost one-on-one confrontation. I did have a little bit of some issues with England, but not a lot at that point. And then I mean, obviously, the ultimate goal would have been to take Moscow, although I'm not sure how realistic that's going to be here in V4. Even in V3, Moscow, at least from the YouTube wars I saw, maybe fell 50% of the time. It wasn't overwhelmingly that the Germans took Moscow. So I was just trying to get as much territory as I could. Obviously, the cities are important there in Russia, both to deny them a victory point as well as give Germany a victory point. Lebensraum, I believe, is the capture and holding on for two Russian cities there. So that's what I was kind of doing there. And then as the game evolved, it became much more difficult to hold on to what I had. I know Global War 36 enthusiasts made this comment, and I agree completely that this was the toughest challenge I had as Germany in terms of holding on to the gains that I made early in the war. It seemed like I was getting attacked probably for about the last half a dozen turns or so of the game from every direction. Russia and the Japanese had signed a non-aggression pact early in the game, and they both honored that through the end of the game. So Russia really only had one enemy the entire game, and that was Germany. The Allies and the Russians never came to blows. If the game would have continued, I could definitely see some conflict breaking out between the two of them, but at least for the duration of the game, Russia only had Germany as a adversary. So Boston Bruce was able to devote 100% of his production and his resources to dealing with Germany. Didn't have to worry about, the Far East or any incursions over there. So that in and of itself made things difficult, just because Russia, obviously, when you're going into Russia, their factories are located much closer to the front lines than Germany's are. So, and when Russia only has to worry about Germany and they're devoting 100% of their production to fighting Germany, I had my hands full. And Bruce did a great job all game long with his defense. Definitely have to compliment him. He'd pull back, he'd counterpunch. He started out buying mostly, infantry class units and kind of soaking up casualties as I, went deeper into Russia. And then when he saw openings, he started buying, T-34s, Katyusha rocket launchers, heavy armor when he developed that tech. He also used his paratroopers really well. He was dropping paratroopers quite a bit into open territories that I just did not have the forces to cover. So Bruce did a great job defending all game long, and I had my hands full just dealing with Bruce. But then England, they did devote some resources to down here in Africa, but not a whole heck of a lot. I think they mostly sent forces to Africa or built forces in Africa just to keep Italy honest and keep Italy on the sidelines. I would say, just a rough guess, I would say Germany probably faced about 75% of the UK production throughout the game. And as we got deeper into the game, and especially once Japan had taken out the Far East Command in Anzac, that percentage probably went even higher. It must have been close to 100% for that I was facing the UK production there for the last part of the game. And then the US, they started out, I would say it was probably about 50-50 once they got in the war. They were devoting about 50% of the resources to the Pacific, 50% to Europe. And that gave me a little bit of a respite. It allowed me to, continue to concentrate mostly in Russia. I didn't have a whole lot to worry about in Europe, in Western Europe. But then I would say probably about the last 7 turns of the game. I don't know if it's because Global War 36 enthusiasts kind of saw that Japan was maybe an unstoppable juggernaut, or they perceived Germany to be the weaker opponent. But I would say for about the last 6 or 7 turns of the game, the United States pretty much devoted 100% of their resources against Germany. And throw in the Free French. The Free French did nothing but devote resources to Europe as well, and it was just impossible. The Russians, the British, the Americans, the French, all devoting pretty much everything they have just to fighting Germany. There wasn't much I could do for that last portion of the game. It was mostly just hanging on, trying to throw a few surprises here and there at these guys to keep them off balance a little bit. But it really ended up playing out a lot like World War II itself, where the Allies had a Germany first strategy, and they went all in on taking out Germany before dealing with Japan. And that is really how this game played out. I was getting squeezed, from on the Eastern Front from the Russians, the Western Europe with the Allies. I was constantly having to shuttle forces back and forth. I always tried to keep a fair amount of paratroopers available, and it seemed like one turn they'd be in Western Germany, and then I have to shuffle them over because Bruce would make a good offensive maneuver, so then I'd have to shift them to the east, or then the Allies would land in Western Europe somewhere or whatnot, and I'd have to shuffle them back to Western Germany. It was the same thing with armor. I'd rail stuff to the Eastern Front, and then the next turn I'd have to rail it back because there was danger in the West. So they constantly had me moving my forces back and forth. My Air Force was another thing I had. I really wanted to devote most of my Air Force to Russia and try to take them out as quickly as possible, but again, there were just so many Allied planes in the West that I constantly had to move my fighter force back to Germany as well. So like I said, I was just really just trying to hold on for the last portion of the game. And then when it came to Paris, which is currently surrounded, I built that up as strong as I could. Obviously, I did a fortification. I had 21 infantry in there, a half a dozen AA guns, a bunch of planes, but that wasn't my only issue. The Allies have the Operation Overlord ability now, and it was kind of like an ace in their sleeve. They never used it, but obviously they could at any time, so I constantly had to have West Germany built up as strong as possible as well. I think I ended the game with 18 infantry, like 7 or 8 fighters, handful of AA, some paratroopers, and I would have liked to, once the Allies started landing in Spain and then even France, to move some of those forces into France and maybe push them back off the continent, but I couldn't because I constantly had to worry about Overlord. And I'm sure if I would have moved all those forces, or a great deal of them, out of West Germany to send them to France, then I'm sure Global War 36 enthusiasts would have then done Overlord on the American portion of the turn, landed in West Germany, and now I lose West Germany. Not only, West Germany itself, but now they're adjacent right to Berlin, and now I'm really in trouble. So as long as they had Overlord hanging over my head like that, I had to leave that strong of a force in West Germany. So I really couldn't, send all the units to Paris and France that I wanted to. So that was definitely an issue. As far as some of my luck, I don't want to cry me a river here, but some of the luck was just absolutely horrible. Now, in the battle for Paris, when GW36 enthusiast went in, I did get some good rolls, so that maybe balanced out a little bit. But the die rolls for me were just horrible. I mean, it started in Spain with both the fact that I suffered a pretty high number of casualties winning the Spanish Civil War, and then I know GW36 enthusiast touched on this as well. The recruitment rolls were ridiculous. I have 6 territories, or at least I did here in Spain. So that's a 50% chance of hitting your recruitment roll. And I think there was like 8 turns where I rolled and I hit once. So like 1 out of 8. I mean, it was just ridiculous. So not that, 3 or 4 more recruitment rolls worth of forces would have stopped the Allies from landing, but nonetheless, it would have, taken more casualties off of them. I also made a mistake. I got so wrapped up in my German turn most of the time that, I'd forget about Vichy or forget about Spain. And I meant to actually pull everything back into Madrid instead of leaving like 1 unit in each territory. Because if the Allies want to land, they're going to land. I mean, 1 or 2 infantry in Galicia Leon isn't going to stop a UK or US invasion. So you're just basically throwing away your forces. So I meant to pull everything back into Madrid and then maybe do a counterattack on one of their landing zones. But I completely forgot about it, and then they invaded Spain while I had everything spread out. So that was the first bad die rolling I had. The other thing was when I did my Blitzkrieg turn with Germany. So I did end up accomplishing everything I wanted to, so that was good. But I think Peter ended up adding up that I lost 87 IPP worth of units on my Blitzkrieg turn. I just lost a ridiculous number of units taking everything. And then Silk pointed out that like my self-propelled artillery, I had a bunch of self-propelled artillery so that they could pair up with the armor and blitz. And I think I'm not sure exactly how many rolls I had with my SP artillery, but I only hit like twice. So that was another really bad luck on my part when it came to my Blitzkrieg turn. And then right after that, I created Vichy. So then I rolled for all of the territories and the ships. And I don't know if I've seen a more lopsided rolls when it comes to the Vichy and Free French. I mean, it was ridiculous. I think I got a couple of these North African territories that are worth $1 a piece, and southern France obviously goes Vichy, and that's it. I mean, everything else went Free French, and then the ships were even worse. The Free French came out with a couple of subs, a battleship, a destroyer, I think a transport maybe. I mean, it was just crazy. And as Vichy, I got like 1 ship. I mean, it was unbelievable. So that obviously really hurt. I mean, not only did I not gain the IPPs and any additional units that I could use as Vichy, but then with them going Free French, it allowed France to be, not a major player in the game, but, more than just a simple minor nuisance for sure. And then the last bit of bad luck I want to comment on, and this really sent me into a tailspin, honestly. If the game hadn't ended when it did, I'm not sure what I would have done. And that was when Hambone went in and on the turn where he surrounded Paris. So he texted me and said, hey, look, I'm sending a medium bomber to bomb your airfield in Paris, do you want to send your fighters up to intercept? So clearly I knew at that point he was going for the surround. And if Paris is surrounded, the airfield is damaged, then all my units suffer that surround penalty. And that's huge because I knew the U.S. could follow up with a massive amount of jets and fighters and advanced artillery. So I'm like, okay, well, Hambone's sending in 6 fighters and his medium bomber. So I've got 10 planes in Paris. I've got 4 jets and 6 fighters. So we both have radar, so we get the additional bonus on the intercept values for the planes. So his 6 fighters had a value of 4 apiece, so that's 24. And then the bomber was a 1. So he has 7 units attacking, let's say, at a 25 total die. My 10 planes not only obviously outnumber his by 3, but my 6 fighters defend at 4, so that's 24. But the 4 jets are 6 on the intercept value, so that's another 24. So that's 48. So I had 3 more planes and a 48 to 25 die advantage. And what happened? He shot down 5 of my planes and I shot down 3 of his. I was like, seriously? Like at that point, I'm like, Paris is done. It's just not in the cards for me to hold Paris. So that was extremely disappointing. Like I said, I was pretty much ready to throw in the towel at that point. But then, Peter went into Paris and, the die was more favorable to me and I was able to hold on. So I guess to a certain extent, things evened out a little bit. As far as the Italians, I wanted to bring them in. It's boring just having them sit on the sidelines. I'd much rather have them actively involved, but it just never seemed like I had an opportunity to do so. Rome right now is sitting with 4 infantry, 2 militia, and a seaplane. So pretty much easy pickings for all of those French, American, and British units that are, here in Western Europe and in the Mediterranean. I recognized fairly early on that, unless Hambone made some kind of, colossal blunder, which I knew wasn't going to happen, Italy was going to stay on the sideline. So then I just started lend-leasing pretty much every turn to Germany. Italy was sending a fighter up there. I did build some battleships. I think 3 I ended up putting on the production chart. And that was, I think that was a turn where Hambone moved most of his British Navy into the Indian Ocean. It seemed like he was going to engage the Japanese. So just maybe to throw him off a little bit, I started building and putting down battleships on the production chart, hoping that would draw his Navy back. And I think it did, at least partially, if not fully. He brought those forces back. So that then ended up helping out the Japanese. So that was good. Hambone and GW36 enthusiasts played great. Like I said, they applied so much pressure. I really, I can't see Germany holding out more than another turn or 2. Pretty much no matter what I did. So got to give both of those guys all kinds of credit for coming after Germany hardcore. And again, we touched on Bruce's brilliant defense of Russia. As far as my partner Silk, the board speaks for itself. You've got Japanese roundels from India up through most of China, all down through the South Pacific over to Australia. So he definitely took it to the Allies early on and kept up the pressure. There were a couple of turns there where I thought maybe the Allies would have a chance to counterattack. The U.S. had a pretty big fleet. And again, the British had brought over a fleet here into the Indian Ocean. So I thought maybe they were going to try to squeeze the Japanese, but it didn't work out that way. And Silk has got a huge force over here, just a couple of sea zones away from Hawaii. So I could see if the game continued, him going into Hawaii, and probably not, but possibly even threatening the west coast of the United States there. So He played a great game. He had some really good strategies. Obviously, we were in constant communication. He gave me some tips here and there, offered some advice on how to deal with all the threats I had coming at me. I guess the good news with the Allies and the Russians focusing pretty much exclusively on Germany was it allowed Japan a more free hand in the Pacific. So I think the Japanese ended up getting 6 of the 8 victory points for the Axis. Germany just got the other 2. So there was some good that came of it. Silk wasn't faced with as much pressure, and that allowed him to kind of run wild. And even here at the end of the game, he's really just as strong. The British came in and took a couple of the Money Islands, but Silk obviously would be able to take those right back. The KMT broke out a little bit, but again, I think Silk would be able to take care of those issues fairly easily. As far as what my thoughts were going forward if the game was to continue a little bit, like what I try to do. Well, first with Italy up here in C zone, A11. So I've got the entire Italian fleet right there outside of West Germany. So again, going back to the whole Operation Overlord special ability. So I put that Italian fleet there so that if the Allies did try Overlord, they would have to come through that Italian fleet, and I was going to tell them, if you try to invade West Germany, then Italy is going to declare war on the Allies, and they're going to defend that sea zone. I'm not sure I would have won that sea battle, but if you look, let's see, I think this is the card right here that the British have in terms of naval units up here around England. So it's a battleship, a battle cruiser, a heavy cruiser, a light cruiser, a couple of destroyers and torpedo boat destroyers. So not a great amount of naval units. The U.S. has mostly just transports, a couple coastal subs. Now, the Allies did have a strong air force, so if they would have brought that to bear, which I'm sure they would have, that would have definitely tipped the scales, and they would have been able to take out the Italian Navy. But hopefully, Italy would have been able to take a bunch of ships with it and weakened the invasion force into West Germany. So that was what I was doing with the Italian Navy. Now, obviously, that would have then put Rome at risk, but Overlord happens on the U.S. portion of the turn, and obviously the U.S. goes last in the turn sequence. So the U.S. wouldn't have had the ability to then attack Rome that same turn, so then it would have went around to the new turn, Germany goes first, and I would have railed probably 4 infantry down to Rome, as well as bring over a bunch of my planes, bring most of the Luftwaffe down to Rome to protect that, so that when the Allies, the next Allied turn came around there, Rome hopefully would be defended enough to hold on for a turn or two. So that was what my plan was with the Italian Navy. As far as Paris goes, so it's currently surrounded. Now, one mistake I did make with this is I had taken a bunch of forces out of Alsace-Lorraine and moved them into Paris. Originally, for most of the game, I think I had altogether between advanced mechs and SS Panzer Grenadiers, I had a dozen in Alsace-Lorraine. I should have kept them there. Obviously, moving them into Paris helped defend Paris better, but then it opened me up to being able to get surrounded. I don't know that Hambone would have been able to fight through, or even if he would have tried, if I would have had those 10 advanced mechs in Alsace-Lorraine. I'm not sure he had the units to take it, and then obviously there's no surround at that point. But the other issue mistake I made was, so he bombed the airfield in Paris, which negated my ability to scramble to Alsace-Lorraine to defend it. What I should have done with all the planes I had in West Germany, which again I think was 7 or 8, I should have put them in Bavaria. There's an air base there that's adjacent to Alsace-Lorraine. And he didn't have 2 bombers. I think he only had 1. So he wouldn't have been able to bomb both the airfield in Bavaria and Paris. And once he went into Alsace-Lorraine, I could have then scrambled planes from whichever air base he didn't damage. And Bavaria is still adjacent to West Germany, so even though I would have pulled the planes out of West Germany, if the Allies would have landed there, I could have just scrambled the planes from Bavaria to West Germany. So really, them being in Bavaria is really the same thing as them sitting in West Germany. The only issue is I then could have scrambled to Alsace-Lorraine. So that was definitely a mistake, both in terms of probably moving those advanced mechs out of Alsace-Lorraine and then also not basing my fighters in Bavaria instead of West Germany. But as far as this next turn, what I was going to do is I was fairly confident I could break the surround on Paris. So I got a Tiger tank in Berlin. I've got 5 paratroopers in West Germany. I've got altogether, counting the fighters that are in Berlin and Bavaria, like 10 fighters altogether. So what I was going to do is I was going to go into Alsace-Lorraine. I was going to bring out the 4 SS Panzer Grenadiers from Paris. So those 4 plus the Tiger and all the planes would easily have taken out his 2 medium armor and 3 paratroopers. And then whatever between the Tiger and the SS Panzer Grenadiers that survived, I was then going to blitz into Picardy along with dropping the 5 paratroopers as well. And he's got 3 Marines and artillery. So I should have been able to take Picardy as well. So then with those 2 territories back in my possession, I'm not sure he would have then had the units to be able to surround again on the next turn. I think I might have been able to avoid getting surrounded for that next turn. Plus, I also would have obviously paid off the damage on the airfield in Paris so that he would then have had to try to bomb that again to make that part of the surround. So that was what I was going to do here in Western Europe and France. As far as on the Eastern Front, it all depended on what happened with Paris. If Paris would have fell, which it didn't, but if it would have, I was going to pull back all my units in the east. So I've got 4 Tigers, 4 advanced mechs, and 2 SS Panzer Grenadiers in Warsaw. In Bessarabia, I've got, I think, 3 advanced mechs, 5 medium armor, and 10 SS Panzer Grenadiers, I believe. All that was going to be pulled back. The 4 Tigers in Warsaw was going to rail to West Germany, and then all the other ones would have moved back their maximum 2 spaces. Because if Paris would have fell, all that I got left is what's in Germany. So Germany itself is completely threatened. So I would have to protect Berlin at that point. I would have no choice. So I would have just had to give Bruce free rein in the east and just pull everything back to Germany itself. Now, Paris didn't fall, so my plan was I was going to still rail the 4 Tigers to West Germany, both to beef up the defenses there, as well as stage units for a possible counterattack. With the rest of my forces here in the east, I was contemplating a couple of things. I was thinking that maybe I would just stand pat. I would have stayed in Warsaw, pulled back maybe 1 to Romania proper, and had those 2 forces, one northern and southern, to strike back at Bruce if he came at me. Or another possibility, and this was actually probably what I was going to do, was I was going to use the remaining forces in Warsaw to go 1 to East Poland, along with my entire force in Bessarabia up 1 to East Poland, and then those 2 combined forces, after I took out this lone medium armor, blitz into Western Ukraine. So I would have been in Western Ukraine, adjacent to Kiev, threatening Kiev with 7 advanced mechs, 10 SS Panzer or 12 SS Panzer Grenadiers, and 5 medium armor, minus maybe losing 1 of them with this T-34. So that would have been a pretty big force. I actually don't think Bruce has any force that big in any one territory in Russia right now. And again, I would have been at the doorstep to Kiev. So then I would have been applying pressure a little bit back on Bruce, give him something to think about so that he couldn't just keep rolling west. So that was what I was going to do probably on the Eastern Front, since Paris did survive. And that is pretty much it for what I was planning down the road. Thankfully, it didn't come to that because, like I said, I don't think any of that would have been able to hold off defeat much longer. I mean, even with Paris holding this last turn, Global War 36 Enthusiast has got here in Aquitaine, he's got now like 8 advanced mechs. He's got like 24 advanced artillery. He's still got, I don't know how many jets, like about 8 jets. It's just a ridiculous amount of stuff. So, but if I could have prevented Hambone from reapplying the surround, I don't think even all those units could take out Paris even on turn 19, just because these 21 infantry would all be defending at 6s on the first round. Then they would still be at 5 on every round after that. These half a dozen AA guns would produce what, 24 or no, 18 shots all at 5 on the first round. So that would have probably taken a pretty heavy toll on his planes. And I think he's only got 1 regular fighter. All the rest are jets. So, and I was definitely going to use my heavy air transports to bring over a couple of more AA guns this turn as well. So I think I would have taken a pretty big chunk out of his air force there on round 1 if he would have came in. So I'm not sure he would have even tried. He might have built up again for another turn or two. And that's really about it. I think that playing Germany is, I don't know about more difficult, but I think their strategic objectives are kind of out of whack a little bit. I don't really agree here in Spain. So to get a victory point for Spain, it's to win the Spanish Civil War. Okay, that's it. It doesn't say hold Madrid indefinitely. It doesn't say the nationalists got to be in control of Madrid and Spain indefinitely. It just says win the Spanish Civil War. Germany did. I don't think that's a victory point that should be taken away if Spain is subsequently taken by the Allies, which why wouldn't they? I mean, if you're the Allies, 10 out of 10 games, you got to go into Spain. Not only are you going to take away a victory point from Germany, but it gives you an easy in to Europe. You've now landed on the southern flank of the German forces in France. I mean, and you're going to meet minimal opposition for the most part. I mean, why wouldn't the Allies land in Spain? So I don't agree with that victory point being able to be taken away. You win the Spanish Civil War, and it's the same thing for Russia. If the Republicans win, then that should be a permanent, Russian victory point. They won the Spanish Civil War, should be end of story. As far as the Atlantic Wall victory point, I definitely agree that if any part of the Atlantic Wall falls, then Germany doesn't get that point. That makes sense. But as far as the ability to keep that victory point, I'll be interested to see how Hambone does here in our upcoming YouTube war. But I think that's extremely difficult. You've got to hold, it's Aquitaine in the south all the way up to Denmark. So that's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 territories that you've got to hold. It's just too difficult. I mean, I just don't see how Germany's going to have enough forces built up in 7 territories that the Allies can't just pick the weakest link and just land, So I think that's an extremely difficult victory point for Germany to get. And then the other one is Lebensraum. That one isn't as bad. That's 2 Russian cities, and you've got 5 possible: Leningrad, Smolensk, Moscow, Kiev, and Stalingrad. So that one isn't as difficult to accomplish. Now, I obviously don't have any of those cities under German control here at the end of the game, but at one point I did have Kiev and Smolensk, and I was actually all the way to the gates of both Moscow and Leningrad. So I don't think that objective is as difficult to obtain. The sad part is when looking at these, that's a total of 4 victory points. I had all 4 of them 3 of them, but a total of 4 points at one point and lost all of them. So, but I think of the 3, the Lebensraum would be the easier of the 3 to hold on to. I do also have to, one other comment I forgot with Boston Bruce, and He mentioned how he was luring me into Smolensk and then did a counterattack here in northern Belarusia. That really surprised me. I had, and he was right, I was planning on going into Leningrad that next turn. And in northern Belarusia, I had a huge mechanized army. I think I had, at the time, half a dozen medium armor, 10 advanced mechs, upwards of 10 SS Panzer Grenadiers, just a huge army. And then in Smolensk, I had based, I think, 7 or 8 fighters. And at the time, I had radar, so I could scramble an unlimited number of those fighters. So I thought, there's no way Bruce is going to attack me in northern Belarusia. I mean, he doesn't have enough units to take on the mechanized army I have, let alone all the planes I'm going to scramble. But he did, and I got to give him credit. I came out on the better end of it, but he took a handful of units out of me and really made an attack on Leningrad at that point on the next turn very problematic. I didn't even end up going in because the odds had shifted. He dropped a bunch of infantry down there as well in Leningrad, so it just, and I got to give him all kinds of props. I really, really, I was like 100% sure he would not attack northern Belarus. I'm like, he's not. He's just going to build up his defenses and hope he can hold out. But he did, and that was actually a perfect attack on his part, even with him coming out the worse for it. So definitely give Bruce props all game long, but I had to highlight that. I had forgotten that, and I wanted to mention it because that was an especially nice touch from Bruce. So other than that, if you guys got any questions or any comments, feel free to leave them. Definitely a learning experience. First V4 game. I am the Italians in Operation Dark Horizon, so I'd love to try to get Italy into that, so we'll see how that goes. But again, let me know what you guys think. And we will see you guys back here in hopefully less than a month's time for Operation From Russia with Love. Thanks for watching.